The other side of the coin is supply. Supply is the quantity of a product that producers are willing to sell at all possible prices. Now, economists have made observations about supply as well. And just like demand, economists have observed a consistent phenomenon when it comes to supply within a free market economy. This phenomenon, considering it relates to supply, is called the law of supply. The law of supply states producers, so businesses, will supply more products when they can sell them at higher prices, and fewer products when they can sell them at lower prices. Now, this can be confusing. The reason why is sometimes students have a hard time taking the perspective of a business owner because the law of supply is concerning itself with the viewpoint of the producer or the business owner. We are all familiar with the role of a consumer. We've all bought products before, but almost none of us have ever put on our businessman or businesswoman's hat before. So you will have to imagine you are a business owner and look at the law of supply from that unique perspective. With your business owner hat on, remember the first part of the law of supply states producers will supply more products when? When will you, as a business owner, crank up the factory floor machinery to full blast, churning as many products as you can off the assembly line? What motivates you as a business owner? Profit is your motivating factor as a business owner. When do you profit the most? When you can sell your products for the highest possible prices, right? So when will producers supply more products? Producers will supply more products when prices are high because profit motivates them to do so. You have to strike while the iron's hot. Now, the second part of the law of supply states producers will supply fewer products when prices are low. Why is supply low when prices are low? When prices for your product are low, you as the business owner lack the motivation to produce a large supply of your product. Why a low supply when prices are low? There's a lack of motivation due to low prices, hence the low supply levels. Now, if you're scratching your head and feel your spidey sense tingling, you're not wrong. When you compare the law of supply to the law of demand, there is conflict between those two laws. When do we want to buy more products? When prices are low, right? However, what type of supply will producers supply when prices are low? They will supply a low supply when prices are low. But that's when we want to buy. When will producers supply a large number of their products? When prices are high. However, what will buyers do when prices are high? We don't want to buy them when prices are high. So there is a conflict between what the buyers and the sellers want. And the outcome of this struggle is ultimately what we are after, and we'll see in just a couple of slides. Once again, we can bring social studies and math together to look at the law of supply. Once again, the x-axis will represent quantity of our product. Remember that quantity is just a fancified word for amount or number. So on the x-axis, we are keeping track of the number of products supplied by businesses/producers. On the far left of our x-axis, once again, we would begin with the number 0 on this very far left-hand side, and we will once again say that our value on the far right is 100 units of, in this instance, our product. On the y-axis, We are still tracking price, the price of our product. At the bottom of our y-axis, we will have a value of $0. And at the peak of our y-axis, we will once again have a value of $100. To create a supply curve, we'd also need a T-chart, which could be used to keep track of production at various prices. On the screen now, you can see a pre-prepared example. If we were to take these numbers and plot them, what would such a line look like? Once again, pause this presentation and sketch a line that you believe represents the law of supply on a piece of paper. Now think of the definition of the law of supply. Does your line represent the words expressed within the law of supply? Does your line show producers supplying more products when prices are high? Then the second part of the law of supply. Does your line show producers producing fewer products when prices are low? If so, you should see a line on your paper that matches the one on your screen. If we look at the supply curve, we can see that when prices are high, a relatively high amount of product is supplied. And when prices are low, a relatively low supply of products is created by producers. Now, there are a couple of factors that can affect supply as well. The first of three factors we will look at is the cost of resources. Recall, all businesses need resources. Do you recall the two types of resources we've discussed thus far that businesses need? Right. Human and natural resources are both needed by businesses, and the price of both human and natural resources can fluctuate or change. They are not constant or locked in place. Human resources can change for a variety of reasons. For example, if a new minimum wage law was created, they could go up if many businesses are expanding or opening up and they have to compete with each other for workers. One way to convince someone to work for you as opposed to the other guy is to pay them more. Bottom line is when the cost of resources rise, it can affect supply. And we'll see how in a brief moment. When it comes to natural resources, like we see examples of which on the slide before us, their price can change too. If, for example, more people are driving, consuming gasoline to fuel their cars, the cost of oil, gasoline's magic ingredient, may rise because of scarcity. And soon you will see a rise in the price at the gas pumps. Here, supply can also be impacted. The bottom line is when the cost of resources go up, producers buy less of those resources. And if you have less necessary ingredients or resources to make your product, then supply will go down. The opposite is also true. If the cost of resources go down, then producers can buy more and supply levels can increase. A second factor that can affect supply is the number of suppliers. Whenever a new product hits the market, usually there are a limited number of suppliers because it's a new product. Imagine a time before smartphones. I know, hard to believe. Well, when smartphones first hit the market, there was only one supplier, Apple. And as a result, there were a relatively low level of smartphones available to hungry consumers. Fast forward to today, and there are numerous smartphone suppliers like Apple, Samsung, Sony, Nokia, etc. And as a result, we have relatively high levels of supply. So, more suppliers equals more supply. However, when suppliers begin to disappear, so too do supply levels. Have you seen a typewriter? It's kind of like the computer's grandpa. It's a rather irrelevant product today because so many technological advances in computers, etc., have made them obsolete. Hence, there are very few typewriter manufacturers, and supply levels are consequently low. Low number of suppliers equals low supply. Finally, expectations can also affect supply. Just like informed consumers, businesses like to keep their ear to the ground to detect changes in our economy. So when the talking heads on TV are predicting unprecedented gloom and doom, some businesses may choose to scale back their levels of supply. Because if the worst turns out to be true, the businesses don't want to have just spent a whole bunch of money producing products that are going to collect dust on the shelf because people aren't buying. That's a loss for the business. So they slow down the machinery on the factory floor, reducing the levels of supply. However, if sunny skies are here to stay, so to speak, then businesses will continue to maintain or increase levels of supply so they can capitalize and make hay while the sun shines. One of the tasks that you'll be asked to perform on our end of unit tests is the interpretation of a political cartoon. Now, this can be challenging, but like any skill, it's one that can be developed. Understand that with a political cartoon, the artist is attempting to convey some type of message. They could have picked up a pen and paper or sat down at a computer and began clacking on a keyboard. However, instead, they drew a picture. Therefore, in attempting to understand what their point is, it's essential to consider every detail in the picture. Assume nothing in that picture is an accident. It's all there to support the artist's message. So, as we look at this picture, what details do you notice? Generally, students point out the humongous vehicle. They also note the license plate on the vehicle that reads demand and see the relatively small gas pump. They see the gas pump reads supply. Furthermore, students' attention is drawn to the grumpy faced man who's wondering why gasoline is so expensive. So, the big picture question is, what's the point of this cartoon? The cartoon attempts to address one of the fundamental questions in a free market economy, and that's why do products cost whatever it is that they cost? Where do prices come from? The use of gasoline is a fitting one because it's a product whose price is constantly changing, and we can see this because we drive past dozens of gas stations every week. It's also something that many drivers, a group you will soon count yourself a member of, like to complain about. They'll say things like, "Why are gas prices so high, darn government?" The reality is that it's not the government that's to be blamed for prices in a free market economy. The government in a free market does not establish prices. Remember, a free market is defined by freedom from government influence, meaning our government does not set our prices. So, where do prices come from? The answer rests in the two main concepts we've discussed today. Prices come from an interaction between supply and demand. Gas may be expensive, and when it is, it's usually because the level of supply, here represented by the relatively small gas pump, doesn't meet the level of demand represented by the giant SUV. It's not the government. So this is the last slide where all the gasbaggery pays off. One final time, we see the XY coordinate plane. Once again, the x-axis represents the quantity of the product. The y-axis represents the price. What happens when we lay our supply curve over our demand curve? X marks the spot. Here's where the magic happens. Here's where prices come from. Prices in a free market economy aren't dictated by the government or the president. They come from the struggle between what consumers want and what producers want. Prices in the free market economy are the result of the struggle between supply and demand. So the intersection point is known as equilibrium price. It is the price when products don't sit on the shelves collecting dust because they're too expensive, nor are the shelves empty because everyone has snapped up products priced too low to take a pass on. Here, with the equilibrium price, it is the metaphorical equivalent of Goldilocks's third bowl of porridge. It's not too hot, it's not too cold, it's just right. Essentially, both consumers and producers are happy.